Edward Smith-Stanley 1866–1868. Edward Smith-Stanley, born on March 29, 1799, and known as the 14th Earl of Derby, was a prominent British statesman who played a pivotal role in the political landscape of the mid-19th century. Descended from a long line of aristocrats, he inherited the title and responsibilities associated with being an earl, but it was his intellect, political acumen, and strategic thinking that set him apart in the world of British politics. As the leader of the Conservative Party, Derby's political career spans several decades, and his tenure as the 14th Earl of Derby from 1866 to 1868 marked a crucial period in the history of Britain. The political climate during 1866 to 1868 was characterized by significant social and economic changes, as well as a series of challenges that demanded adept leadership. The aftermath of the Crimean War, coupled with industrialization and urbanization, created a dynamic environment where political reforms were on the horizon. The question of parliamentary representation and the widening suffrage were pressing issues that demanded attention, making this period a critical juncture in British politics. Against this backdrop, Edward Smith-Stanley assumed the role of the 14th Earl of Derby, facing the daunting task of navigating the complex web of political challenges and reforms. Edward Smith-Stanley, the 14th Earl of Derby, hailed from a distinguished and venerable lineage that traced its roots back through centuries of British aristocracy. Born into the renowned Stanley family on March 29, 1799, his family's influence and prominence in society were substantial. The Stanleys had a storied history, with strong connections to both political and military spheres. The family's ancestral seat, Knowsley Hall in Lancashire, served as a testament to their long-standing presence in the British aristocracy. This rich heritage undoubtedly shaped Edward Smith-Stanley's worldview and set the stage for his eventual entry into the political arena. Edward Smith-Stanley's early education and formative years were marked by the privileges afforded to a young aristocrat. His academic pursuits led him to Eton College, a renowned institution that has long been a cradle for future statesmen. The intellectual environment at Eton likely played a crucial role in shaping Derby's critical thinking and honing his leadership skills. Moreover, the Earl's exposure to classical studies and literature during this period may have contributed to the intellectual depth that he would later bring to his political career. Additionally, the political influences on Derby's early life were significant. Growing up in a family with a tradition of political engagement, he was exposed to the intricacies of governance from an early age. The mentoring and guidance he received from family members and influential political figures of the time fostered his interest in public affairs. These early experiences laid the foundation for Derby's later political endeavors, shaping his values and beliefs as he embarked on his journey in British politics. Edward Smith-Stanley's ascent in British politics was marked by a combination of inherited status, personal ambition, and political acumen. His succession to the title of the 14th Earl of Derby in 1834 marked a turning point, propelling him into the forefront of political leadership. Derby's early involvement in politics was characterized by his affiliation with the Conservative Party, aligning himself with the conservative principles that were prevalent during the early 19th century. As he rose through the political ranks, Derby's charisma, oratory skills, and strategic thinking set him apart. His ability to navigate the complexities of political alliances and his adept management of party dynamics contributed to his rise to prominence. Derby served in various key positions, including terms as Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Secretary of State for War and the Colonies. Through a combination of political maneuvering and genuine commitment to public service, Edward Smith-Stanley became a central figure in British politics, leaving an enduring legacy that extended beyond his time in office. Edward Smith-Stanley's assumption of the title as the 14th Earl of Derby in 1834 came with a confluence of aristocratic heritage and the weight of significant responsibilities. Inheriting the title meant not only taking on the family's rich legacy but also embracing the duties associated with being a prominent figure in British aristocracy. The Earl's ancestral seat at Knowsley Hall became a hub of political and social activity, serving as a center for both private life and public engagements. The inheritance of the title positioned Derby as a leader within the aristocratic circles, providing him with a platform from which to exert influence on the national stage. Edward Smith-Stanley's political beliefs were rooted in the conservative traditions of his time. As a member of the Conservative Party, He championed principles such as traditionalism, social order, and a cautious approach to change. Derby's conservatism was characterized by a pragmatic understanding of the need for gradual reform to maintain stability and preserve established institutions. His political philosophy reflected a balance between acknowledging the necessity for progress and the preservation of the social and political order that had defined Britain for centuries. Derby's political affiliations were marked by his leadership roles within the Conservative Party. His tenure as the party's leader saw him play a pivotal role in shaping its policies and direction. Additionally, his ability to navigate the intricacies of coalition politics and manage diverse factions within the party contributed to his longevity and influence in British politics. Edward Smith-Stanley's term as the 14th Earl of Derby encompassed a period marked by significant political and social changes. As Prime Minister, Derby implemented key policies and initiatives that left a lasting impact on British society. Reform Acts of 1867. One of the most notable achievements during Derby's term was the passage of the Reform Acts of 1867. These acts expanded suffrage, extending voting rights to a larger segment of the male population. Although Derby's government was not the sole architect of these reforms, he played a crucial role in guiding the legislation through Parliament, demonstrating a commitment to addressing demands for increased political representation. Foreign policy. Derby's government navigated the challenging landscape of international relations. Notable events included the Fenian raids in Canada and the response to the American Civil War. Derby's administration sought a balance between maintaining British interests and avoiding unnecessary entanglements, showcasing his diplomatic finesse. Economic policies. Derby's government grappled with economic challenges, including issues related to trade and tariffs. His policies aimed at fostering economic growth and stability, reflecting a pragmatic approach to economic management. The years 1866 to 1868 were characterized by a dynamic socio-political climate in Britain, shaped by a confluence of domestic and international factors. The nation was in the midst of significant transformations brought about by industrialization, urbanization, and the aftermath of the Crimean War. Society was grappling with issues of political representation, social inequality, and the need for reform. These years marked a critical juncture in the ongoing evolution of British governance and society, setting the stage for key political developments. The socio-political landscape was marked by a growing demand for political reform from various segments of the population. Calls for an extension of suffrage, the redress of social and economic inequalities, and the pressing need for addressing working-class concerns were prominent themes. Additionally, Britain's global standing and foreign policy decisions played a crucial role in shaping the overall political environment during this period. The Fenian raids. The Fenian Brotherhood, an Irish nationalist organization, launched a series of raids into Canada with the aim of putting pressure on Britain to grant Ireland independence. This posed a significant challenge to the British government's ability to manage both domestic and international affairs. Economic challenges. The period witnessed economic challenges, including debates over trade policies and tariffs. The government had to address issues related to economic stability and foster growth while responding to the demands of different economic interests. Calls for political reform. The demand for political reform, especially an extension of suffrage, gained momentum during these years. The pressure for changes in the electoral system was a key issue that the government had to contend with, reflecting the shifting dynamics of political power in Britain. Foreign affairs and American Civil War. The aftermath of the American Civil War presented diplomatic challenges for Derby's government. Navigating relations with the United States and addressing the implications of the conflict on British interests required careful consideration and strategic decision-making. Edward Smith-Stanley's response to the contemporary issues and crises during his term as the 14th Earl of Derby reflected a combination of pragmatism, diplomatic finesse, and a commitment to addressing the evolving needs of British society. In response to the Fenian raids, Derby's government worked to maintain diplomatic relations and manage the potential fallout, showcasing a balanced approach to handling international conflicts. Derby's government also addressed economic challenges by implementing policies aimed at fostering economic growth and stability. The Reform Acts of 1867, a significant achievement during his tenure, demonstrated a responsiveness to the growing demand for political reform. By extending suffrage to a broader segment of the population, Derby sought to address concerns about representation and inclusivity in the political process. In navigating the intricate web of domestic and international challenges, Edward Smith-Stanley's leadership was characterized by a nuanced understanding of the socio-political landscape. His responses to contemporary issues reflected a commitment to stability, reform, and the preservation of British interests, leaving a lasting impact on the political trajectory of the nation during this transformative period. The Reform Acts of 1867 were a watershed moment in British political history, representing a significant expansion of the electoral franchise and a crucial step toward a more inclusive and representative democracy. These acts, often collectively referred to as the Second Reform Act, followed earlier reforms in 1832 and laid the foundation for a more democratic political system in the United Kingdom. The primary aim was to address disparities in electoral representation by extending voting rights to a broader segment of the male population. The key provisions of the Reform Acts of 1867 included the enfranchisement of urban working-class males, particularly in industrial towns, and the reduction of property qualifications for voting. Additionally, the acts redistributed parliamentary seats, eliminating rotten boroughs with minimal populations while creating new constituencies in growing urban areas. This redistribution sought to align parliamentary representation more closely with population shifts resulting from industrialization and urban migration. Edward Smith-Stanley, the 14th Earl of Derby, played a central role in the passage of the Reform Acts of 1867. As the leader of the Conservative Party and the head of the government during this period, Derby faced the challenge of managing the demand for political reform while balancing the interests and concerns within his party. Derby, known for his pragmatism and political acumen, recognized the need for reform to address the changing dynamics of British society. Despite initial resistance from some conservative quarters, he championed a moderate and measured approach to reform, seeking to prevent more radical proposals from gaining traction. Derby's leadership was instrumental in navigating the complexities of parliamentary politics and garnering support for the reform agenda. The passage of the Reform Acts was a collaborative effort involving negotiations, compromises, and strategic decision-making. Derby's ability to manage internal party dynamics and garner sufficient support from both sides of the political spectrum contributed significantly to the success of these reforms. His approach demonstrated a commitment to adapting the political system to the evolving social landscape while maintaining a degree of continuity and stability. In conclusion, the Reform Acts of 1867, guided by the leadership of Edward Smith-Stanley, played a pivotal role in shaping the democratic fabric of Britain. The legacy of these reforms resonates through subsequent centuries, marking a significant step toward a more inclusive and participatory political system. Derby's pragmatic approach to reform showcased his adaptability as a leader and his recognition of the need to reconcile tradition with the demands of a changing society. Edward Smith-Stanley's approach to foreign affairs during his term as the 14th Earl of Derby was characterized by a combination of pragmatism, diplomatic finesse, and a commitment to safeguarding British interests on the global stage. Derby recognized the delicate balance required in navigating international relations, especially during a period marked by geopolitical shifts and evolving alliances. Derby's foreign policy approach was rooted in a commitment to maintaining stability and avoiding unnecessary entanglements. In the aftermath of the American Civil War and amid tensions in Europe, Derby prioritized diplomatic solutions and sought to position Britain as a mediator rather than an aggressor. His government aimed to preserve British influence while avoiding direct confrontation with major powers. Fenian raids. One of the key diplomatic challenges during Derby's term was the Fenian raids, orchestrated by the Irish nationalist Fenian Brotherhood. These raids targeted Canada with the aim of pressuring Britain to grant Irish independence. Derby's government faced the delicate task of managing relations with the United States, where the Fenians were based, while also protecting British interests in Canada. The crisis highlighted the complexities of diplomatic relations in the context of Irish nationalism and Anglo-American dynamics. American Civil War. The American Civil War posed diplomatic challenges for Derby's government as they navigated the delicate issue of British neutrality. Derby's approach was one of caution, as he sought to avoid taking sides in the conflict. The Trent Affair, involving the seizure of a British ship by the Union Navy, strained relations, but Derby's government skillfully managed the situation to prevent further escalation. European relations. Derby's government engaged in diplomatic relations with major European powers, including France and Prussia. The unification of Germany and the shifting power dynamics in Europe required careful diplomatic maneuvering. Derby's government sought to maintain a balance of power and protect British interests amid these geopolitical changes. Assessment of the impact of Derby's foreign policy decisions. Derby's foreign policy decisions left a lasting impact on Britain's standing in the international arena and its ability to navigate complex diplomatic challenges. The key assessments include: preservation of neutrality. Derby's commitment to neutrality during the American Civil War and other international conflicts helped preserve Britain's image as a diplomatic mediator. This approach prevented unnecessary hostilities and maintained a degree of goodwill among major powers. Resolution of the Fenian raids. Despite the challenges posed by the Fenian raids, Derby's government successfully managed the crisis without escalating into a full-scale conflict. The diplomatic resolution demonstrated Derby's ability to protect British interests while avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Adaptability to geopolitical changes. Derby's government adeptly navigated the changing geopolitical landscape in Europe, especially with the unification of Germany. By maintaining a flexible and adaptive foreign policy, Derby ensured that Britain could respond to evolving power dynamics without compromising its own interests. In conclusion, Edward Smith-Stanley's legacy in British politics is marked by his contributions to political reform, pragmatic leadership, and the enduring impact on the Conservative Party. His ability to navigate the complexities of his time, both domestically and internationally, contributed to a legacy that resonates in the annals of British political history. Edward Smith-Stanley's tenure as the 14th Earl of Derby was a period marked by significant political, social, and international developments. His leadership, spanning from 1866 to 1868, was characterized by a pragmatic and adaptive approach to governance. As the head of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister, Derby faced a rapidly changing political landscape, both domestically and abroad. During this time, Derby navigated critical issues such as political reform, foreign affairs, and economic challenges. The passage of the Reform Acts of 1867, under his leadership, was a landmark achievement that expanded suffrage and reshaped the political dynamics of Britain. His approach to foreign policy, emphasizing diplomacy and neutrality, showcased a nuanced understanding of international relations. Derby's legacy also includes his adept management of party dynamics, fostering unity within the Conservative Party during a transformative period. Edward Smith-Stanley's lasting legacy in British political history is one of adaptability, pragmatism, and a commitment to addressing the evolving needs of society. His contributions to political reform, particularly the Reform Acts of 1867, left an indelible mark on the democratic fabric of Britain. By embracing change and positioning the Conservative Party as a party capable of reform, Derby's legacy endured beyond his time in office. The enduring impact of Derby's leadership is also reflected in his diplomatic finesse and the preservation of British interests during times of international turbulence. His legacy as a consensus builder within his party contributed to the stability and resilience of the Conservative Party. As a statesman, Derby's imprint on British political history is characterized by a nuanced blend of tradition and adaptation, leaving a legacy that transcended his immediate political era. Edward Smith-Stanley's leadership during 1866 to 1868 holds broader implications for the trajectory of British politics. His pragmatic approach to governance, willingness to engage in political reform, and commitment to stability showcased a model of leadership that resonated beyond his immediate term. Derby's ability to navigate complex challenges without succumbing to radicalism had a stabilizing effect on British politics during a period of significant societal transformation. The Reform Acts of 1867, a cornerstone of Derby's legacy, set a precedent for future political reforms and contributed to the evolution of a more inclusive and representative democracy. The diplomatic finesse demonstrated in handling international crises emphasized the importance of measured approaches to foreign policy. Derby's legacy serves as a reminder that effective leadership requires a delicate balance between preserving established values and adapting to the changing needs of society. In the broader context, Edward Smith-Stanley's leadership left an enduring impact that extended beyond the confines of his time in office. His legacy continues to be studied and remembered as an integral part of the historical narrative, influencing subsequent generations of political leaders and contributing to the ongoing evolution of British political institutions. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it informative, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future.